Usually when we set out to upgrade our lives, we kind of default to focusing on the hardware.
Oh, absolutely. The classic gear upgrade.
Right. We buy the ergonomic chair, the faster laptop, or, I don't know, premium running shoes. We expect those shiny, tangible things to just magically make our days run smoother.
Yeah, it's the new gear fallacy. We basically convince ourselves that a physical upgrade will magically solve our internal lag.
Exactly. But then you look at reality. You look at why you still feel completely overwhelmed by 2 p.m. or why you still snap at your partner over, something totally trivial.
Or why you literally cannot focus on a demanding task for more than 5 minutes without grabbing your phone.
Yes. And suddenly it hits you. The hardware isn't the problem at all. We are running on a fundamentally bloated, outdated operating system.
I mean, that is the absolute definition of a biological system crash. We're constantly trying to process terabytes of modern high-speed data, but we're doing it using emotional and cognitive software that was built for the Stone Age.
It's just a recipe for perpetual burnout. So, welcome to this deep dive. Today we have a massive stack of sources curated specifically for you. And we're pulling from, everywhere. Technical guides on no-code software automation, deep psychological research on neuroplasticity, studies on emotional maturity, and even some clinical papers on secure attachment.
It's a really diverse stack.
It really is. And our mission today is incredibly ambitious. But looking at all this research is completely doable. You're going to build a complete upgraded operating system for your life.
A full reboot.
We're starting right at the surface with an external digital brain to handle the busy work, and we're going to dig all the way down to the internal emotional bedrock required to actually sustain high performance and, real happiness.
And looking through this massive stack of sources, there's this one critical unifying thread that connects the coding tools to the childhood psychology.
Bandwidth.
Exactly, bandwidth. Whether we're talking about a silicon computer chip or your actual human brain, you only have a finite amount of energy to spend each day. So we're going to explore exactly how to offload the mechanical, repetitive tasks to technology. Because once you do that, you can dedicate your precious biological energy to deep learning, mental fitness, and true emotional connection.
Which is what actually matters. I mean, think about your morning today. How many minutes did you spend digging through your inbox, hunting down that one specific PDF you knew you downloaded on Tuesday?
Probably too many.
Right, because the research provided here has this terrifying statistic. The average knowledge worker spends 1.8 hours a day just searching for and gathering information.
Wow.
That's 9.3 hours a week. You are statistically losing an entire workday every single week just looking for your own stuff.
It is a staggering waste of cognitive bandwidth. I mean, to stop drowning in this information overload, the sources argue we have to essentially outsource our memory to a digital system.
A personal knowledge management system, right? A PKM?
Yeah, or as some in the productivity space call it, second brain.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because historically, we've always organized information by putting things in boxes. Like, you have a folder for your tasks, a folder for your recipes, a folder for project estimates.
Right.
But the sources are saying that folder systems are actually part of the problem.
Precisely. Rigid folders assume that information is strictly linear, isolated. But your brain doesn't work in boxes. It works in webs of association.
Like interconnected concepts.
Exactly. Say you learn a fascinating fact about cortisol in a health documentary, and then later you read an article about cortisol and sleep deprivation. Where does that go? The health folder.
I usually just make a duplicate and put it in both, which is a mess.
Exactly, it creates friction. Modern PKM tools like Obsidian or Notion operate on a concept called networked thought.
Networked thought. I like that.
Obsidian, for instance, uses bidirectional linking. So instead of forcing a note into a single box, you just tag the concept, and the software visually draws a line between those two nodes. It automatically maps your thoughts exactly how your physical synapses fire.
Which means the information just surfaces naturally when you are thinking about adjacent topics. It's like hiring a lightning-fast digital executive assistant.
It really is.
But even with a great web of notes, you still have to manage the administrative side of life. And the solution presented in the technical sources is just, aggressive, merciless automation.
Oh yeah, they don't hold back. They highlight tools like Zapier, noting that the average user takes less than 6 minutes to set up an automated workflow.
6 minutes?
Less than 6 minutes. You can connect a simple app like Collected Notes to an outliner like Workflowy. You just type a thought on your phone, and the software automatically routes it as an actionable bullet point in your project manager.
That's incredible.
And we can take that even further. Let's look at the cognitive cost of manual admin work. Every time you switch browser tabs, say, from your calendar to your invoicing software to your team's chat app, your brain has to load a new set of rules and context.
Oh, context switching.
Right. This phenomenon, context switching, burns literal glucose in your brain. It physically exhausts you.
Which perfectly explains the YouTube video in our stack by a creator named Dimitri Panici. He highlights an update in Notion utilizing something called webhooks.
Oh, this use case is fantastic.
His use case is wild. He built a system where he clicks a single button in his Notion workspace, and it triggers this invisible cascade.
It's basically a chain reaction.
Exactly. It pulls his client's data, generates a $200 invoice in Stripe or PayPal, assigns a 5-day due date, logs the invoice ID back into Notion, and then sends an alert to a specific Slack chat.
All from one click.
All from one click. And if he messes up, he clicks void button, and an automation platform called Make.com just reverses the entire process.
See, a webhook is essentially a digital tripwire. When an event happens in one application, it instantly fires a payload of real-time data to another application.
So they talk to each other.
Exactly. What Dimitri did there isn't just some neat tech trick. By eliminating the need to manually copy and paste IDs across 4 different platforms, he eliminated the context switching cost.
Right.
He reclaimed a massive chunk of his daily biological battery.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second. Let's be realistic. Hearing all this, building out a visual Synapse web and Obsidian, programming digital tripwires across financial platforms, doesn't building and tagging this elaborate second brain become a full-time job in itself?
That is a very valid concern.
Right. Like, how do we stop this from becoming just another form of procrastination? We feel productive because we're, color coding our Notion dashboard, but we aren't actually doing work.
That is the ultimate trap of personal knowledge management. The system becomes so rigid and demanding that it just shatters the moment you have a genuinely busy week and don't have time to perfectly categorize a new thought.
Yeah, you miss one day of sorting and the whole thing falls apart.
Exactly. But the newer sources in our stack point to a massive paradigm shift. It's AI integration, specifically a technology called RAG.
RAG. Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Exactly. Imagine having a hyper-intelligent librarian living inside your notes.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
With RAG, you don't spend hours tagging and sorting. You just dump the raw information into the system. And then when you're writing a report or trying to solve a problem, you just ask the AI a question.
Like ChatGPT, but just for my stuff.
Precisely. It scans your entire messy database, understands the context of what you need, and surfaces the exact combination of notes and data. We're moving from manually building a rigid archive to having a dynamic cognitive scaffold that serves you rather than you serving it.
Oh, wow. So the computer does the organizing, the sorting, and the fetching. That means our actual biological wetware, our brain, is finally freed up. Because we've now successfully offloaded data storage and administrative tasks to our digital PKM. So our actual brain has the free space to do what it does best, which is learn deeply.
Right. When your working memory isn't bogged down trying to remember to send an invoice, you can actually engage in deep work.
Deep work, meaning intense single tasking.
Exactly. It's the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. But the sources are clear here. Just staring at a textbook for hours isn't efficient learning.
No, it's exhausting.
Right. To maximize this newly found bandwidth, they highlight the 80-20 rule, which is also known as the Pareto principle.
Okay, so this states that identifying the critical 20% of a skill will account for 80% of your performance.
Yes, it's about leverage.
To make that click, it's like learning to play the guitar. Instead of spending years memorizing an entire guitar chord dictionary, you just learn the 8 to 10 most common chords that make up 90% of popular songs.
Exactly.
You focus your neural energy on just those chords, and you're playing actual music in weeks, not years.
What's fascinating here is how you ingest that 20%. The sources distinguish sharply between passive learning, like lazily rereading highlighted text, and active learning.
Oh, the active versus passive debate.
Right. Interestingly, the data suggests that reading from a physical paper book can actually be more effective for spatial memory and retention than reading from a backlit screen.
Really? Just the physical paper makes a difference.
It does. It gives your brain spatial landmarks.
Yeah.
But the absolute gold standard they present for active learning is the Feynman technique.
Ah, named after the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman. And the mechanism here is brutal but brilliant. You take a blank sheet of paper, write the concept you want to learn at the top, and attempt to explain it as if you were teaching a 12-year-old.
Yes, and the key rule, no jargon allowed.
Right, because jargon is often just a mask for ignorance.
Exactly. The moment you stumble or find yourself reaching for a complex buzzword because you can't explain it simply, you have instantly identified the exact gap in your own understanding.
You know exactly what you need to go back and restudy.
Precisely. You find the weak link in your neural pathway.
But, even if you use the Feynman technique perfectly, we're still fighting human biology, right? We're fighting the brain's natural tendency.
Oh, the forgetting curve is relentless. The brain naturally prunes information it doesn't think is strictly necessary and reliable.
Which is annoying when you're trying to learn a language or code.
Very. So, to combat this, the literature introduces the RAIL framework. That stands for retrieve, apply, interleave, learn. And the absolute core of this framework is spaced repetition.
Okay, let's unpack the retrieve part of that, because it sounds like just reviewing flashcards. But the underlying science is way more intense than that, isn't it?
Oh, it's much more than just looking at a flashcard. Neurologically, spaced repetition is all about timing. It forces your brain to retrieve a piece of information at the exact psychological moment it is about to forget it.
The exact moment is fading.
Yes.
Yes.
Doing this requires immense biological effort. It literally burns energy to forge that neural pathway.
Right.
Every time you successfully retrieve the memory just before it fades, you are basically telling your brain, hey, this is vital for survival. You force the encoding into long-term memory. It is quite literally strength training for your synapses.
But strength training makes you tired. Retrieving information right as you're about to forget it is biologically expensive.
Very expensive.
It causes massive cognitive fatigue, which brings us to a critical realization, and really the next layer of our operating system. Accelerated learning requires intense focus, which drains our mental energy.
Yes, it depletes the battery fast.
So to sustain this over a lifetime, we must treat our minds like an athlete treats their body. We have to move from mental skills to mental fitness.
The entrepreneurial and leadership studies in our stack heavily emphasize this point. Founders and high achievers constantly fall into the trap of sacrificing their biology for the hustle.
The whole sleep when I'm dead mentality.
Exactly. They live in a state of chronic stress, which means chronically high cortisol levels. And cortisol degrades the brain's ability to learn. It creates systemic inflammation.
So grinding 24/7 actually makes you dumber over time.
Literally, yes. The paradigm is completely shifting. Mental fitness isn't just a soft luxury perk anymore. It is a hard competitive edge. You cannot be a world-class creator, parent, or business owner if your brain is perpetually stuck in a fight-or-flight stress response.
Right, and the science of neuroplasticity provides the roadmap out of that burnout. For a long time, the consensus was that an adult brain was essentially fixed, right?
Right, the old you can't teach an old dog new tricks idea.
Yeah, like a baby's brain is a blank canvas, but adults were stuck with their habits. But the sources point out that this is entirely false. We can physically rewire the architecture of our brains at any age.
We absolutely can. But to do that, we have to understand the two parallel learning systems operating in our heads. First, you have the dopamine-driven reward system.
Yep.
This is the spike of excitement and motivation you feel when you declare, you're going to start waking up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym.
Oh, I know that spike well. But dopamine is volatile, right? It always fades. Like day 4 at 5 a.m., that dopamine is completely gone, and you just want to sleep.
Exactly. Which is why relying on pure motivation is a losing game. The second system is located in a midbrain region called the striatum.
Striatum.
Right. This is a repetition-based system. It doesn't care about excitement. It only cares about repetition. When you repeat an action enough times, the striatum just takes over and makes the habit automatic. It requires almost zero cognitive load.
I love the analogy of carving a path through a dense jungle. Like the first time you try to walk through, you're hacking away with a machete. It's exhausting.
Very.
That's the first day of a new habit. But if you walk that exact same path every day for a month, the brush clears, the dirt gets packed down, eventually it's a paved highway, and you can walk it blindfolded. That highway is the striatum taking over.
And this explains why willpower is an inexhaustible resource. It's a phenomenon known as ego depletion. Every time you have to force yourself to do something or resist a temptation, you are hacking through the jungle.
So what does this all mean for our daily lives?
It means we have to design our environment so that good habits happen on autopilot.
The sources offer an incredibly practical simple tactic to bypass that jungle entirely, the 2-minute rule.
I love this rule.
If you want to build a new habit, scale it down to an action that takes less than 2 minutes. Don't commit to a 1-hour workout. Commit to putting on your running shoes and just stepping outside.
It completely removes the psychological friction of starting.
Right.
And conversely, if you want to break a bad habit, you manipulate your environmental context to add friction. Like if you want to stop mindlessly snacking while watching television, don't rely on willpower.
You just don't keep the snacks in the house.
Exactly. Or you eat your meals in a completely different room. True mental strength isn't about gritting your teeth and ignoring temptation. It is about using system design and neuroplasticity so you don't have to use willpower in the first place.
And to accelerate this rewiring, the research introduces a concept called PQ reps, or positive intelligence reps.
These are brilliant.
They're 10-second mindfulness exercises. It's as simple as rubbing 2 fingertips together with such intense focus that you can feel the microscopic ridges of your fingerprints.
Or just listening intently to the farthest sound you can hear outside your window.
Right. And doing this repeatedly throughout the day boosts what they call your self-command muscle. It actively quiets the saboteur region of your brain.
Now that saboteur region is largely driven by a very specific, very ancient piece of hardware, the amygdala.
Yeah, we got amygdala.
Yes. Which brings us to the final and really the most foundational layer of our operating system, because you can have the most automated digital PKM in the world. You can be a master of deep work.
You can have ironclad 2-minute habits.
Right. But a single emotional trigger can crash your entire system. To truly master our lives, we have to examine our emotional bedrock.
And the sources draw a massive, crucial distinction here between emotional intelligence and emotional maturity.
This is a huge distinction.
Emotional intelligence is essentially data collection. It's knowing what you feel. It's the ability to say, I recognize that I am feeling angry and defensive right now.
Yes.
But emotional maturity is the execution of that data. It's the ability to actually apply that knowledge and consistently choose logic, patience, and empathy over impulse and retaliation.
And if we look at the biology of a trigger, we experience what psychologists call an amygdala hijack.
Amygdala hijack. That sounds intense.
It is. The amygdala is the brain's primitive threat detection center. When it senses danger into your brain, a passive-aggressive email from your boss triggers the exact same biological alarm as a tiger jumping out of the bushes. It literally cuts off communication to the prefrontal cortex.
So it just bypasses the logic center entirely.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex is your logic, reasoning, and emotional regulation center, and it just gets shut down.
And the connections between the amygdala and our stress responses are incredibly thick, especially because a lot of that wiring is laid down when we are very, very young.
Yes, early childhood.
The clinical sources dive deep into attachment theory to explain this. Essentially, our early childhood bonds with our caregivers shape an internal working model for how we view all future relationships.
Right.
If our early caregivers were inconsistent, absent, or unresponsive, we might develop insecure attachment styles.
Right. We might develop an anxious attachment where we constantly fear abandonment and need reassurance, or an avoidant attachment where we subconsciously view intimacy as a threat, so we push people away the second they get too close.
Both sound exhausting.
They are. The alternative is secure attachment. This is a relational dynamic where both deep closeness and independent space feel safe. A securely attached person can express their needs without hostility, trust their partner, and crucially, they can navigate and repair a conflict without the underlying terror that the relationship is going to end.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. And I have to push back a little.
Go for it.
It is very easy to sit here and talk about engaging the prefrontal cortex in a sterile environment. But when you are in the middle of a massive argument with your partner, your heart rate is 120 beats per minute, and your amygdala is literally screaming at you that your core identity is under attack. Is it actually possible to just choose emotional maturity over reactivity?
This raises an important question, and the honest answer is, in the heat of that exact moment, if you haven't laid the neurological groundwork, no.
You just can't.
You cannot just choose maturity. The amygdala processes information milliseconds faster than the prefrontal cortex. You will react defensively before logic even picks up. But this is exactly why the previous step, the mental fitness and those 10-second PQ reps we discussed, is the key to everything.
I see the connection now. It's not about stopping the trigger in the moment. It's about the cumulative training you've done beforehand.
Exactly. By repeatedly practicing those tiny moments of intense mindfulness when you are not triggered, and by setting what the sources call powerful intentions, focusing deeply on the why and your core values rather than rigid expectations for how others should behave, you are physically adding gray matter to your prefrontal cortex.
You're upgrading the hardware.
You are strengthening the inhibitory pathways. So when the argument happens, that upgraded hardware literally buys you the milliseconds you need. It creates a tiny window of psychological space between the trigger and your response.
And in that tiny window of space, everything changes. You actually have the bandwidth to deploy active listening.
Yes.
Instead of furiously formulating your defensive comeback while the other person is still speaking, you actually process their words. You can set a boundary clearly without resorting to aggression. You move from a knee-jerk, reactive state to an intentional, responsive state.
And over time, repeatedly acting from that responsive state actually heals those early childhood attachment wounds.
Really? You can undo it.
You can. By creating and experiencing safe, non-reactive connections in the present, your brain rewires its fundamental expectations for human relationships. You move from an insecure attachment style toward what psychologists call earned secure attachment.
Earned secure attachment. That is incredibly empowering. Let's take a step back and look at the entire operating system we've just pulled together.
Let's review it.
We started at the surface, building an external digital brain using PKM, bidirectional linking, and AI tools like RAG to handle the administrative busy work.
Right, eliminating the massive biological cost of context switching.
Then, we utilized that newly freed bandwidth to accelerate our learning. We bypassed passive reading, engaged the 80-20 rule, and used the Feynman technique in spaced repetition to physically strengthen our neural pathways for deep work.
Because that deep work drains our energy, we implemented a recovery protocol. We leveraged neuroplasticity using the 2-minute rule to pave highways in our striatum so good habits run on autopilot.
While utilizing those 10-second mindfulness reps to build our self-command muscle.
And finally, we used that self-command muscle to secure our emotional bedrock. We bought ourselves the psychological milliseconds needed to override the amygdala hijack, allowing us to choose emotional maturity and cultivate earned secure attachment in our relationships.
I had a fully upgraded top-to-bottom operating system.
It really is. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we continue on this trajectory, seamlessly outsourcing all our factual memory, our scheduling, and our repetitive logic tasks to AI and digital automations like Notion and Zapier, and if we successfully use that freed up time to cultivate deep work, emotional maturity, and secure attachment, does the very definition of human intelligence shift?
Oh, wow.
Right. In the future, perhaps being the smartest person in the room won't mean knowing the most facts or crunching the most data. It will mean having the highest capacity to regulate ourselves and connect with others.
That is a brilliant reframe.
Yeah.
The hardware of the future is undeniably going to be digital and AI-driven, but the software that truly dictates the quality of our lives is entirely emotional.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Our challenge to you: do not let this remain passive learning. Use that Feynman technique. Explain one of these concepts to a friend, or pick just one 2-minute habit or one digital automation to try today.
Start upgrading your operating system right now.
Until next time, keep your systems running smooth, and we will see you in the next deep dive.